By now, every Allied flyer knew about the Baron and his bright red albatross. All of von Richthofen's flyers had taken to painting their machines gaudily, and the British pilots had returned to their home aerodromes bitterly recounting tales of having run into the circus. One flyer who found himself in combat against the most famous of the German squadrons was Billy Bishop. William Avery Bishop was born in 1894 at Owen Sound, a port town on the Georgian Bay in Ontario. As a youngster, Bishop had shown little indication that he would one day be famous. Somewhat of an underachiever, he'd performed poorly in school, preferring instead to apply his energies towards getting into trouble, shooting pool, and chasing girls. The one area Bishop did excel at was target shooting. A Christmas gift of a .22 caliber rifle was something that did catch the young man's interest, and he was soon demonstrating his proficiency by shooting squirrels from the trees around his neighborhood. Like many of his contemporaries, Bishop would never be more than, at best, an adequate pilot, but his marksmanship would serve to make him one of the most famous fighter pilots of the Great War. At 17, Bishop had secured entrance into the Royal Military College at Kingston, Ontario, where his poor academic progress left him in jeopardy of expulsion. The outbreak of war, however, created a demand for soldiers, and he found himself commissioned a lieutenant and sent to England with the 4th Canadian Mounted Rifles. By the time Bishop arrived in France, it was not as a cavalry officer, but rather as a Royal Flying Corps observer with No. 21 Squadron. After 4 months of being chauffeured over the lines in a BE-2 Quirk, without once ever having the opportunity to fire his gun at the enemy, Bishop was evacuated from France after a landing crash had damaged his knees. While still in an English hospital, he began applying for flight school, and upon his release, being declared fit for duty, Billy Bishop began training to be a Royal Flying Corps pilot. On March 17th, Bishop arrived back in France at Files Camp Farm, the home airfield of No. 60 Squadron, located 15 miles from the front. Although back in England now and working as an instructor, the squadron still carried the great ace Albert Ball on its pilots roster. At the time, Ball had 31 official victories. 60 Squadron flew the tiny French-built Newport Scout. 8 days after arriving in France, Bishop scored over an albatross which he chased down from 9,000 feet, firing until it slammed into the ground. The elation of his first victory was short-lived. Upon pulling out of the long dive, the Newport's Larone engine sputtered and died, and Bishop was forced to glide back towards the lines where he eventually came to earth alongside an Allied anti-aircraft battery. 2 days later, Bishop was back at Files Camp receiving congratulations for his first kill, which proved itself to be no fluke when he downed a second albatross on the last day of the month. Bloody April began, and No. 60 Squadron, like all the frontline British units, went on to suffer horrendous losses, with 18 of its pilots shot down during the month. By the middle of the month, Bishop was beginning to feel like an old-timer, as new faces arrived and then quickly departed from the ranks of the squadron. For Bishop, this terrible month was a period of stunning success. On the 7th, he caught another albatross at very low altitude and sent it crashing to the ground near Arras. On the very next day, he downed 3 more German planes. In all, Bishop destroyed a dozen enemy machines in April, including double victories on both the 22nd and the 23rd. In many of these combats, Bishop had dispatched his foes with no more than a few bullets fired, testament to his superlative marksmanship. The pilots of No. 60 Squadron operated in the same airspace as the brightly colored machines of Manfred von Richthofen's flying circus, and on the last day of the month, Bishop found himself locked in combat with the all-red albatross flown by the fatherland's most famous ace. The engagement almost ended Billy Bishop's career when a skillful burst from the Baron's twin Spandaus smashed the Newport's instrument panel and splattered oil on Bishop's face. As von Richthofen passed below, Bishop kicked hard on the rudder, banked over steeply, and pounced on his foe. When he opened fire at 60 yards, the red albatross rolled over on its back and dove away to safety.